So let's
So
give
let's give a few more minutes
for more
more
participants
participants
to
to
join.
join.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Welcome
For as many that are joining. I'm told there's still an echo.
Please,
Please,
can
can others confirm to me?
Yes, ma'am. There's still an echo. Good evening, ma'am. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay, should be better now. Is there still an echo?
It's better.
It's better now.
Awesome. I've been able to mute the other device. Okay, so let's please call everybody that you know, put it on your status, let them know we are live. Our speaker is already here. Our speaker was here before 8. I'm excited for a number of reasons. I can see some persons do not have their mics on. If you can send them a private chat, if you're here, Victoria, Favor, please help reach out to them privately to help them with putting their mic, to connecting their volume. Okay, I only see 2 persons whose volume isn't connected. Please reach out to your colleagues, your friends, people who should be here. This is a topic everybody needs to be a part of. Okay, we are 20. Let's see if we'll get to 25. By 20:05, we'll start. 20:05 on the dot, we'll start. So 2 more minutes.
Returning.
Or 22. Still 2 more minutes, maybe a minute and a half. Thank you, Kike Lomo Adibola. Okay, I should put on slideshow. Thank you. Please let me know when you can see. Okay, it's on slideshow. Okay, I should have been playing music.
The training of financial planning and so how we're having dinner is something I would like us to participate in. If that's okay.
Please, everybody go. I'd like everybody to mute as you join. Somebody should reach out to Mrs. Chidima Mobi to help her with her volume. I can see that her volume isn't connected.
I'm doing. But like. Nǹkan tó bá like tó ṣe best ẹ̀ sí. Tó bá ráyè.
Okay, so we start right away. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. Coincidentally, we now have, okay, I see please let's go mute. Yes, please, as you join, I want you to just drop in the chat box. Let me know where you're joining from. If you're joining from Lagos, Abuja, if you're joining out from outside the country, can you quickly drop in the chat box where you're joining from? Quickly. I see Lagos, Kayode Joseph, thank you. Thank you for joining from Lagos. Where are you joining from? Let's see you. Okay, I see Laura from Lagos. Who else? Have you told people that we are live? Please tell people that we are live. We have up to capacity of 100 on this call. We need to fill every single spot. Okay, Madam Amobi, thank you. Redemption Camp, Victor, thank you. Who else do we have joining? Where are you joining from? Let's do this in 1 minute, 1 more minute. Let me see if I can put on my camera. So I might not put it on all through because of my bandwidth, but let's just see. Okay, so can you see me? I can see myself, so I believe you can see me. Thank you. Yes, Olawumi Adeleke from Ogun State. This is awesome. Okay, let's see. Yes, somebody's joining from South Africa. Thank you for joining. Yes, from Lagos, Mr. Harrison from Lagos, Mrs. Adeniran from South Africa. Thank you. Okolo from Lagos, Kana Okolo from Lagos. Thank you, Olabisi from Lagos. Okay, so we've done, let's move on to something else. Can you tell me one thing that you're looking forward to get from this session? Quickly, let's type in the chat box. We're 31, call your contacts, let them join. This is a rare session that you shouldn't miss for anything. So please, let your contacts know, begin to share the links that you got. Let them join now. Please, in the chat box, let me know what's that one thing that you want to get from the session today. Let's do this in another 1 minute so that we can go straight ahead. No, just put it in the chat box. Type. Bolale, please, can you mute, please? Bolale.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, thank you. Not a problem. Thank you. Please, can you type what's that one thing you want to get from the session today? I haven't seen any response. Nice. Please, I want to see from a few persons, and I'll ask you my very last question while we wait as we settle in. Okay, the comments already. Let me see. Oh, so somebody says expert knowledge. Mr. Raji, we want you to pour your entire knowledge. So I think Kinkule Akyode says expert knowledge. Victor Ika says financial ideas to fortune. Great. And then Amobi says investment strategy. Flora says, oh, she's looking forward to learning. Mr. Liu says financial literacy. Magdalene says to better with current financial knowledge. So there's a lot of expectation in the room. My last question is this. Put one word in the chat box that describes how expectant you are. Maybe a word or a phrase. So Olawumi says learning on financial growth. Please put a word or a phrase in the chat box right away showing how excited you are. So you can be pumped up, excited, you know, expectant, whatever it is, quickly drop it in the chat box. Quickly, quickly, quickly. Let me hear your comments. Please, can we type? That's the last question before we go right into the session. How, oh, okay. You see, expectant, great. Okay. Okay, so while you highly expectant, I love that. I like it's good. So while others are joining and writing their expectations, I'm just going to move straight ahead into the session for today. Okay, so who are we in Inspired for Impact? So this session has been put together by the non-profit organization called Inspired for Impact. And our primary, Adekemi, please, if you could mute, our primary purpose for being in existence is to help professionals thrive. So whatever industry, discipline, profession that you find yourself, our role in Inspired for Impact is to help you thrive in that profession. And we recognize the fact that people are in different stages of their lives, different stages in their careers. And so what we try to do with our programs is to do different programs that will affect different persons. So for this particular program, given the times that we are in, economic uncertainties, people are wondering, how can I still thrive despite what is happening? We recognize the fact that in times like this, you know, where there's hardship everywhere, that's when even some people become millionaires and billionaires, you know. So we're saying, what should we do differently? What can we begin to learn to put in place now? And it doesn't matter what stage of your career you are in. I want to say this as you open, you know, as you join this session, be open-minded. You will hear things today that you would have thought, oh, that might maybe make you think, oh, I wish I'd done this earlier. Why am I just hearing this now? You know, like they say, when you wake up is your morning. What matters the most is the things you now begin to decide to do differently from today, the actions that you would take. Typically, when you attend a program like this, there are different people that join. There's the first 25% who will leave that session and begin to implement the things they heard. There's another 25 that will take their time. They'll remember maybe much later and take their time. And by then, they might have forgotten some of the things, or they've even used up some of the money they would have invested or, you know, planned well. There's another 25% that will remember some things, but will never get to the point of implementing the things. Finally, the last 25% will leave this call and not do anything. And you know what? That segregation into different groups is proven with research. So I want you to decide upfront what percentage, which of the groups, which of the quadrants you want to belong to. And I believe everybody here is going to belong to the first 25% who will immediately leave this session and go begin to implement. So this is our agenda for today. We have Kachi, please, can you mute? So our agenda for today, we do have welcome, which I've already done. Games we will move to later so that we can give our speaker enough time. I've also spoken about who we are, but let me just use this slide to explain a bit more regarding who we are. So Inspired for Impact, you know, our vision really is to see individuals striving in their careers and fields of endeavors, having the essential support, experience, skills to succeed and lead. So beyond you succeeding, we expect you to also lead in this constantly evolving professional world that we're in. What's our mission? Our mission is to support our members or people who join our programs to be the best versions of themselves. So as you get the support, the experience, the skills to succeed and lead, you also now begin to implement those things you've learned, you begin to leave them out. So beyond us, you know, giving you this support, from a program like this, we want to see you go out there and become the best version of yourself so that you achieve optimum potential while taking charge of your career, business endeavors, if that's where you find yourself, but most importantly, living true to your purpose and making sustained impact in your spheres of influence. So as much as you learn, you should also be intentional to feedback. Our programs are focused on 3 areas: life, career, kingdom. I'm going to just leave this at the end. If I have the time, I would come back to this so that we can give our speaker adequate time. But our programs really, we have My Journey, My Story, annual events, Living Inspired series, which is what we are doing today. We do have career coaching conversations. We have videos on YouTube, and you know that you can go watch. I'll give you our YouTube platform at the end of the session, and or somewhere in the chat box. Favor, if you could begin to type those details for them. I see Stella also here, Victoria. So let's type the details for them to go follow us on Instagram, on YouTube, and then they get the details. We have our book club, which we do on a quarterly basis. Every month, beginning of the month, we have prayer sessions. And then, let me see, this is blocking my view. We have our career mentoring bootcamp. We started last year. It was just so inspirational. So I'm going to go straight to introduce our speaker. Can I get some virtual claps in the room? Please respond to this. Let's give our speaker some virtual claps. Quick. I've not seen your claps. I will start to speak when I see your clap. Yes, I can see one now. I need to see more claps in the room. Oh, okay. I see them on the chat box. Great. Please put more to show your excitement. So, okay. So as you continue to drop that, let me read through his profile. I feel like I should just, I don't know what to say. So I met this person, if I recall correctly, in 2007 or 8. I can't remember when I met you again. But if you remember, I met you in the cyber cafe. Can you remember? You know, at Igondo.
Yes, I can.
I don't even know. We should have had this conversation before this session. Can you remember that's where we met when I was preparing for KPMG entrance exam?
I can. 2007. Yes, I can.
Oh, you remember also? Oh, okay. So, you know, he walked up to me, saw my screen, and he was like, oh, KPMG. You know, typical now. I just went, who's this guy that is, you know, those days of cyber cafe, not now that you have everything on your phone. You know, I didn't want to listen until he said, oh, I passed the KPMG test. I quickly listened to him, you know, and that's how our relationship started. I can't begin to say everything, but I can tell you one thing. He has been consistent in this that he does. He's one of the best, the finest you find in Nigeria in terms of taking you on your financial journey. I'm not just saying it because I know him personally. I'm saying it because it's the fact. And as he goes ahead, you know, to take us on this topic, you would understand what I mean. So Mr. Kolawole Kazim Raji is a graduate of accounting from OAU, Ile-Ife. He's an associate of ICANN. He commenced his professional career at Nestle Nigeria. And then from there, he moved on to KPMG, the deals advisory team, where he worked on valuations, restructuring, financial and commercial due diligence on acquisition targets. He subsequently moved to investment banking, where he has gathered over 16 years experience working with 2 of the leading investment banking firms, one of which he currently works with. His work experience includes providing corporate finance, corporate finance and financial advisory services to companies and governments towards raising capital, that's debt and equity, advising on mergers and acquisition, and corporate restructuring. On a personal note, he has interest in personal finance that I've known for close to 20 years. As far back as 2007, Kola used to share with us budget templates, you know, those of us who were associates in KPMG at the time. So that's it. Beyond his work, this is something that is quite personal for him. And then he's, you know, with over 15 years personal investment management experience. So this is not work now. He has over 15 years personal investment management experience, over 15 years. And so he's one of the facilitators at the ICANN Corporate Finance Management Certification Training. He constantly speaks on personal finance management, financial management at events and seminars. He's married to a very beautiful wife who I also know personally, and they're blessed with children. So I'm going to welcome Kola. I see that you're already on. So I would see if I can spotlight you. You can go ahead, please. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for the introduction, Victoria. It's a privilege speaking. I see that expectations are high, and I hope I'll be able to at least meet you halfway, one way or the other. So let's go right into it. Next slide, please. So we'll be speaking on financial planning and growth. That's the topic we'll be speaking on. And it's a very interesting topic because it's something that impacts all of us. So maybe I should pause here and ask, what do we understand by financial planning? If I can get one or two comments in the chat box, that would be good. What do we understand by financial planning? Just to be sure that we all know why we are here. Permit me to turn off my video to improve bandwidth, if that's okay. Okay. So what do we understand by financial planning? I'll wait for one or two people to post something in the chat box. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, all right, thank you. I can see spending my money wisely. Thank you very much. Okay, so next slide, please. Next slide. So financial planning, spending my money wisely, budget finance, I think they all speak to one aspect or the other of financial planning. So it's very correct. So financial planning, I wrote here, is a process of taking a comprehensive look at your financial situation and building a specific plan to reach those goals. Put differently, it's practice of putting together a plan for your future, specifically around how you manage your finances and prepare for all of the potential costs and issues that may arise. So it's taking everything all together. What is my financial situation? Miss San, please, can you mute? Thank you. So taking a comprehensive look at your financial situation, how much do you earn? What kind of work do you do? What are your expenses? What are your responsibilities? What are your long-term plans? So looking at everything together and being able to ensure you're able to meet all of those hurdles or all of those tasks that you have ahead of you without having any issues down the line. So that's the concept of financial planning. So managing your resources to meet your expenses, to meet the requirements, for going through life, essentially. So that is what the concept of financial planning speaks to. Next slide, please. So I won't take so much time on this introductory slide so that we can spend more time on the things that matter down the line. And please do make note of your questions so that we can take them after we finish speaking. So in assessing your financial situation, I just want you to reflect, and if you can take notes, please do take notes. What is your annual income from your salary? How much do you earn? I believe that perhaps is the easiest to tell. You know what comes to your hand at the end of each month. If you're a salary earner, if you're an entrepreneur, you know how much money you make on a daily, weekly, monthly, or annual basis. And please, by all means, you should know. If you don't know, that's one of the things I'm calling your attention to, especially for those who don't earn salary. You should be deliberate about knowing how much income comes into your hand whilst you are working. Next thing I have there is, how much income do I earn from other sources? So this might be a bit tricky because it's not defined, it's not formal. So for some here, it might be gifts. For some, it might be trying to do a side job. It might be proceeds of investments, one way or the other. So, but it's essential that we keep a tab on this and keep track of it, because all of this goes ahead towards meeting our everyday needs. So, which is why it's important. You need to, the starting point is knowing your current financial situation. So before you can even move forward, before you can make plans, you need to know where you are at today, what's your current net worth. So if you take a look at all the assets you have, and by assets, I mean things that can earn you money. So by assets, I mean things that can earn you money. So to increase my volume, let me see. I think I'm almost at the highest. I'm now at the highest. So I hope it's better. Amobi. All right. So by assets, I mean things that can generate income for you. Sorry, I can hear an echo. Okay, so things that can generate income for you. So you aggregate everything and you take away all liabilities, loans that you have, or things that take away money from you. That's a simple way of determining what your current net worth is. Now, the importance of this is to know that, okay, if I need to settle all my expenses today, what do I have left? And from what I have left, what can I generate from it over the long term? Next, there is how much do you save on a monthly basis? If for you it's a weekly basis, how much do you save? So you need to know these numbers. They need to exist. You need to either know it at the back of your head or have it written somewhere. So all of this is to know what your current financial situation really is. What are the things you spend money on? I think this is one of the most important questions on this page. And I find it interesting that people work so hard Monday to Friday, at times weekends, and they make money and they say, oh, I don't even know what I'm spending my money on. I don't know what is taking my money. I don't think that's good enough. If you work so hard, then we should at the very least know what we spend those money on. By training, I'm an accountant, so meaning I should be able to keep a tab on how much money on all the expenses of a company, how much more myself as an individual. So I don't think it's too much for me. For instance, my journey on keeping a tab on my expenses, I think started during my first job, and it was someone who was an NYC, someone who was there for NYC was an engineer. So he had these electronic device that looked like a calculator. I can't remember what they called, maybe an organizer also. So it was keeping track of his expenses, and I was interested, and that was actually how I taught myself how to use Excel, keeping a tab on my expenses. I'll come back to that as we continue. Next question here is, what proportion of my annual income do I spend on these items? So the key items that take away money from us. For some of us is clothing. For some of us is our house rent. For some is school fees, either our own school fees or children's school fees. For some people it's food. For some people it's transport to work. For some people it's paying a mortgage or paying a loan to buy a car. But whatever it is, you must know these things, and you must know what proportion of your income goes to those things, because that is where you start the journey of seeing how much you can scale back, how much you can save towards investing for your future. The last question I have there is this: how long can I live without a job? So let's assume the current work I'm doing now stops. How long can I survive without having to borrow? Do you have any emergency savings anywhere that maybe over the next 6 months, over the next 1 year, you can live on? So answer these questions sincerely to yourself, and that's where you know where you are at before you move from here. Next slide, please. Now, so this slide aims to speak to our financial goals. So we are speaking about financial planning and growth. So we've tried to reflect on where we are. Question now is, where would we rather be? What are the things we have in mind that we need to spend money on? Or what is the kind of life we want to live 5 years from now, 10 years from now? This is what I'm going to attempt to speak to on this slide. So what are the major financial events you need to settle down the line? Are you preparing to go to school or to send children to school? Or do you have children in school that you constantly pay their fees? Are you planning for your wedding? Are you planning for your vacation? So are you planning to buy a property, or you want to donate? You want to donate, make a donation or do you have a surgery that you want to support? So these are some of the things that we might be looking forward to spend money on, or looking forward to finance over the next few years, or maybe over the next 10 years or 20 years. At what age do I want to retire? So I see a question saying, how do you write a financial goal? So again, answers to these questions are the things you need to develop the financial goal. Essentially, it's an aspiration. What do you want? What do you want to do with yourself? What do you want to do with your finances over the next few years? At what age do I want to retire? There's a buzzword now, FIRE, financial independence, retire early. Some people want to retire at 40, some at 50. But for each and every one of us, we need to answer that question. At what age do I want to retire? What does retirement mean for me? For some people, retirement means that they don't need to wake up very early and join Lagos traffic to go to work. For some people, retirement means they just want to focus on their ministry. For some, they are called to be an evangelist and they want to go into the field. So all the work they are doing now is just to accumulate resources to help them do this later in life. So what retirement means for each and every one differ. So you need to ask yourself so if you're not going to work day to day, what do you really want to do? For some, they just want to be given to charitable projects. Look for people who are unwell, who are unable to pay their bills, and just pay their bills. For some people, they want to travel around the world. That is what retirement means for them. So what are your goals? What does retirement mean for you? For some, they just want to go to one large expanse of land somewhere and be farming, enjoy the cool breeze, enjoy natural environment. That is what retirement means for them. So we need to define that for ourselves and say, what does retirement really mean for me? So, and maybe I should pause here and speak to this. For me, I would say one of the things I observed growing up is that when our parents were working, maybe they were able to maintain 2 cars, and then you see that they retire, and the first thing you see is that one car stops working, and there's only one car. The other car they can maintain, and before you know it, maybe even that car is struggling to survive, and things are not really as they were when you are working. I don't think that should be retirement. My idea of retirement should be that I should be able to, at the very least, eat whatever I want to eat. I've worked for 25 years, I've worked for 30 years. This is the time to actually rest. So more or less. So I should be able to eat anything I choose to, more or less. And at that time, I think I should crave healthier meals. So it shouldn't be a time when I'm now struggling. So I should be able to earn as much as I was earning whilst I was working, or at least close enough so that I can meet my core needs at the time of retirement. So what retirement means for each of us differ, but you need to know so that you can plan towards it. At the time of retirement, how much income do you think you will need to earn today? So imagine you retire today. Think about how much things cost, how much do you need to spend on a monthly basis, and then you can now grow it with inflation over the next maybe decade or two when you plan to retire. That can give you a sense of how much monthly you think you will need at the time so that you can start working towards it. For some people, they want to start a business. That is their retirement plan. So if you need to start a business, what are the things you need? The contact you need, the finance you need, the networks you need, the equipment you need. You need to visit places to go study what they are doing there. Do you need to go to business school, for instance? What are the things you really need towards starting the business? Do I need to pay off any major debt? For some of us, we already have some debt for one reason or the other, and we have that already ahead of us. How much is the debt? Over what time frame do I have to pay it so that we can work towards it? Next slide. So I think I would dwell on this next slide a bit, because that is part of the core of our message. So what we've done so far is to say, where are we today? Where do we want to be in the future? Now, so, and this speaks to growth. How do I meet? How do I meet my financial goals? So the first and most important part of it is to track your income and your expenses. For anyone that's close to me, I must have had this conversation with them at least once. Track your income, track your expense. Please, if you can go towards the appendix, there's a sample income and expense tracker I have there. Towards the appendix, just to show you what it looks like. Towards the end. Yes, thank you. So this is what, for me, I created for myself. This is what it looks like. So I have this on Excel and I have this every month. So this is what it means. So I'm able to check each income item, and you can modify this as you will. You can take a screenshot of this, so you can replicate this if you want to. So income from salary, income from loans, monies from other things, expenses you make that were reimbursed, investment proceeds. So you know all of the lines of income that you have. So you can have as many lines as possible. And then expenses. These for me are key expenses I have, and I think most people would have. So I won't waste time going through it, but essentially it covers most of the things we spend money on. Now, the objective of this is this. Every day, as you maybe close of business in the day or whilst you're in the office, I spend money on this, you write it down. I spend money on this, you write it down. At the end of the month, you can total it. So we'll stop at that total for now. We can total it. The objective of this is to know what we are spending our money on. Now, I expect that you do this over the next 3 to 6 months. The objective of doing this over the next 3 to 6 months is to be able to tell. So there are things you spend money on, for instance, that will last you for 2 months or that will last you for 3 months. So it should average out by the time you do this consistently for 6 months. And then it also shows a pattern. So with that pattern, you can then do maybe an average of what you spent on maybe phone calls, January, February, March, April, May. So it gives you a sense of the average. The objective of this is to be able to tell, this is actually what I've been spending my money on. Interesting thing is that this thing is an eye opener. If you could be disciplined and consistent with it, you begin to see that, wow, so I've been spending this much on calls. I've been spending this much on fuel. And all those small costs are the ones that begins to open your mind that, oh, I think I'm spending too much on this. I can begin to cut. Perhaps I should reduce what I'm spending on this and increase what I'm spending on this. Or if I cut on this, I will be able to save more. And this for me is real, is practical to me. I would say for at least over the past maybe 12 or 15 years, I've been keeping a tab on my expenses this way on a daily basis. So it's so bad that the days I forget to, it's difficult to even remember. So I try as much as possible not to forget. So one of the things I do to help me is I reduce cash expenses. I try to spend using a card, making a transfer, and I put the narration there. So that way, when I'm going through my statement, I can say, okay, I spend this on this, and it becomes easier for me to record. So that is what I've done for myself. So the objective of this, as I've said, is to be able to tell, this is how much I spend on this, this is how much I spend on this, and then it can help towards creating a budget, and you can help towards scaling what you are spending on some items so that you can increase what you are able to save and invest in the long run. So can we go back to our previous slide, please? If you can go back to our previous slide, thank you. Thank you. All right. So next point there says, start planning for your retirement from when you start working, if you haven't started today. For me, I started when I joined. So when I left KPMG from my intro, I joined an investment bank, 2008 specifically, July. And I realized that was when there was a crisis in the capital market. That was when there was a crisis in the capital market. And I observed that people were being laid off across different companies. For my own company, because it was bank owned, so it really wasn't predominant. But in some companies that were close to me, I saw people were being laid off for no fault of theirs, just because the market crashed. And these people were very sound people. So it wasn't because they were not good at what they do, but businesses had to make a call, had to make a decision, and they were laid off. That was when it dawned on me. So if I'm laid off, how do I start? So, and that was when I actually started thinking about retirement. And I started also trying to advise people that from once you start working, it means that you earn a salary, you have a source of living, and that can stop because it has started, it can stop. So if it stops, what do you fall back on? And truth is that salary is sweet. If you've met anyone who was earning a salary before and then that suddenly stopped, person will tell you the struggles. So salary is sweet, you get used to it. So when it stops, it becomes an issue because, hey, there's no longer maybe 22nd or 25th that salary comes. So you should start planning for retirement early. Never say, oh, I still have time, I still have time. And we'll come to that later. That's the value of that time. I wrote here that save regardless of how little you earn. So a number of the things I will say today, there are things you already know. So it's just maybe putting it in a different perspective or just reiterating it. So it's not about how much you earn. Please go back to the previous slide. Thank you. It's not so much about how much you earn. It's more about the discipline of being able to save. Sorry, thank you. So about discipline of being able to save. If all you are earning is 50K, try to create something, however little, set something aside and be consistent with it. Set something aside and be consistent with it. It's very, very important because what it does is it gives you the discipline, and you might have heard already in books that set that aside first before you even start spending, because the entire salary, most likely, you will find out that it's not even enough. So it's important that what you are saving leaves the pool of all your cash before you start spending. Otherwise, nothing will be left, and you'll be justified to say, really, there's nothing left. So please take note. Now, live below your means. I can't say this enough. Live below your means. It's, if you see wealthy people, they don't spend the way we think that they would spend. In the course of my work, we're advising someone who is one of the richest Nigerians, and we went to meet him to invest in a product, and was supposed to invest $1 billion. So the company says, oh, that for investment like this is the Oga Kpakpata that has to sign. I'm like, how much is $1 billion? It's just more expenses for this company. Or like, the response I got from the relationship officer, so that's the bank's relationship officer, was that is not how the man spends his money. If he spends his money that way, probably won't know of him today. They are usually very frugal. So that tells you that they can afford to do so much more, but they try to curtail their spending. They try to live well within their means. And living well within your means doesn't necessarily mean that you are cheap. It probably means you are being frugal. You are not looking for the lowest cost item. What you are trying to do is try to get the best quality that can last for longer, trying to ensure that you are as efficient as possible in your spending decisions. So that's the main objective of living below your means. So I wrote down somewhere that you should budget your expenses so that you have enough money to pay for your necessities, to pay for your enjoyments, and to gratify your worthwhile desires without spending more than 80% of your salary or 90% of your salary, as the case may be. During the introduction, our host mentioned that we are all at different stages in our lives. We are all at different stages in our careers. For some people, all that they can afford to save is 10% of their income currently. For some people, they can afford to save 25%. So we are all at different stages. Know where you are and just get started. Now, when your earning power increases, so for some of us, we get pay raises either because our companies are making an adjustment for inflation, or we get a promotion, or we get some reward at work. Now, at such periods, the expectation is that we should keep our expenses down. It's not the time to then say, oh, I want to now start eating out. I want to start, if before where I go was a fast food, now I want to go to a proper restaurant. It's not the time to increase our expenses unnecessary. It's best to always keep your expense level low, as if you never got that raise, you never got that increase, as much as possible. So instead, you can tuck away some extra money into a savings, into an investment. So that is how to keep yourself disciplined. That is how to live below your means. Control your expenses as much as possible. Maybe I'll pause here and maybe pose a question if I can get answers on the chat. Which one is easier, to increase your income or to reduce your expense? If I can get one or two answers, then we'll continue. Which do we think is easier, to increase your income or to reduce your expense? Just want to be sure that people are following. Okay, good. I've seen two people say reduce your expenses. Great, great. So my job is done here. It's easier to reduce our expenses. Okay, I've seen one person say it's easier to increase income. It's not as easy to increase income. In increasing income, you probably need to then increase your capacity to earn. Maybe you need to learn something new and justify to the person who will pay that your capacity to earn has increased. But if you check very well your expenses, you will see that there's something you can cut. There's always something you can cut. I argued with this the first time I had it. And for some of us, we have maybe domestic helps assisting us. And someone then, a senior colleague then asked me this question, that you have domestic helps, how much do you pay them? You pay them from your salary. Think about it. They also have a number of expenses and they're able to live within those expenses. Fine, it might reduce the quality, the standard of their standard of living and all, but yes, they are still able to live within those expenses. So if you think about it very well, you can cut your expense. So the question is, are we disciplined enough? Do we want to even give it a try? So let's be mindful of that. So what would help us keep our expenses under check is creating a budget. Like I said, you are tracking your income and your expense. The objective is to be able to tell what you've been spending your money on and then try to curtail it, try to make it more focused and directed. Henceforth, this is what I've seen, the trend I've been seeing. Going forward, I want to spend this amount on calls. I want to spend this amount on that item, like that. That is the end goal. So that budget, you can always keep a track. The sample budget I had shown on the screen, sample expense, income and expense tracker, there was a column towards the end for budget. So once you are done assessing, you can then say, okay, I want to work on a budget of this for this month. Let me see how, and then you can check your performance, and then you can refine the budget with time. Budget usually will not be static. So on a monthly basis, so for me, for instance, my wife and I, every now and then, like once or twice a year, we look at it again. Things are now more expensive. Let's rejig our budget. What do we need to spend more on? What do we need to spend less on? So because things are dynamic, prices of things won't stay the same. So you need to also be factual and then see how you can work that. Now, living below your means, you need to be more efficient. You can do better with less on some certain things. Anything I'm going to say to you today, either in terms of things you can do or things you can invest in, they are things I've practiced or I'm practicing day to day. So that's why for me, it's very practical. So if I ask, maybe I should ask us, how much do we spend on petrol to fuel our generator on a monthly basis? I can get 1 or 2 responses. How much do we spend on petrol on a monthly basis? Just 1 or 2 responses. Whoa, 200K, 5% of net income. So now, thank you. So given that, you might need to start thinking, is that efficient? Does it make sense investing in an inverter? Something that basic. For me, I made that call a long time ago, and maybe I would say I've also been fortunate. I think most of the places I've lived, there's been power fairly well, maybe minimum 8 hours, at times as much as 15 hours a day. So that has helped me. My petrol budget is 7,000 naira a month, and most times I don't exhaust it. Just to give you perspective. So my inverter is always charged, it's always running. An inverter is not big. It's the size of, I better pass my neighbor, 1.4 kVA. And I've been using it now for more than 10 years. Just to give you perspective. Now, what that means for me is that I've been able to save on petrol cost. Now, I might have been fortunate as well because I've lived in places where power is good, and maybe it also means if in choice of accommodation, you also need to be consider this. So because if power is good, you spend money, what you spend paying PHCN bills becomes cheaper than what you spend on gen. You can invest in an inverter, and inverter, the maintenance is usually very low. Now there's one that you use, they call it wet cell, so where you have to buy some water, some battery water. I've forgotten the correct name. You need to top it up every now and then. But again, it's very cheap to maintain. So all in, you will see that your energy cost drops. So for me, for instance, I used to make a lot of calls. Small thing calls. And whilst trying to look inward, whilst trying to reflect, I'm like, oh, I don't need to call every time. I can send a chat. I can send an SMS. And that way it reduced my call bill. But it was something I was deliberate about. I was able to reduce my call bill. So again, driving, you need to drive everywhere. Are there places you can just take a walk? I know when fuel prices increased, a number of us also adjusted one way or the other. So how many of us do carpool? If you have someone close to your house, going to your office or somewhere around where you work, if both of you have cars and can drive, what if you take turns and say, okay, we'll ride together today, someone drive today, the other person drive tomorrow? You save some cost. One thing I noticed with most Gen Zs I've seen is they want to take Uber to everywhere. That was one of the experiences I found in recent times. Why? It's a lot of money. There are some places you can take public transport to, and nothing happens. You save a whole lot. So we need to think, how can I be more efficient? Now, in all of this, there are places we can bring down costs, and those costs can be diverted towards savings. Remember, the objective is I want to meet my financial goals. What I earn now seems like it's barely enough to sustain me. So how can I try to ensure that I'm living within my means? I'm able to set aside even more than I'm setting aside now towards my future, towards meeting my goals. Some of the things we also spend so much money on is eating out. Interestingly, for most of us, we leave the home very early, we come back late. So we are forced to buy food outside. But if you think about it, you might be able to manage some way. Someone once said that the average, if you compare the cost of eating out and the cost of eating home-made food, it's like 3 times. It's like 3 times more when you eat out than when you eat at home. So if you ordinarily would take 2 meals outside before, you can start by saying how you can maybe prepare one and take it to the office, and then you eat only 1 meal outside. That can be a good start, but it's something we need to be deliberate about. So there's a colleague in my office that once told me that he spent on average meal maybe 5,000, and it never cooks. So, and I'm thinking, so if you do 2 of that in a day, and you do that maybe for 20 straight days, that's a whole lot of money. So that can almost feed a family. So it's important we take note of this. Data, airtime. I mentioned airtime earlier. Data. So for some of us, we buy data. For me, in recent times, I'll buy data and maybe 1,000 naira MTN data. And I see that in 3 days it's finished. So, and I have to start thinking, what can I do? For some people, maybe you can consider doing limited. So if you are going to spend 1,000 to use it up in 2 days or 3 days, does it make sense to buy unlimited and pay 15K if you're an heavy data user? At least you know that you have that secured all through. It might look expensive, but at the end of the day, it's cheaper. As I mentioned earlier, key is you want to be frugal. You don't want to be cheap. So you are looking at it holistically. What makes more sense for me? So another thing is loans. People take loans to buy consumables. People take loans and pay so much interest on it. You need to reflect very well. Where do I take loans if I need to take a loan? How much do I spend on clothing? These are key areas where people overspend on. How much do I spend on clothing? If I buy something that is maybe a little better quality, will it last me for longer? Will I be able to wash and use it over a longer period? Actually, I won't say so much on this. It's something we all know. Those things are usually very expensive. They're usually overpriced, and oftentimes you don't have an opportunity to reuse it as much as clothes that we would ordinarily have bought by ourselves. Parties, events, even gifts. When you give gifts, is it to show off, or you actually want to give a gift and you can afford it? So it's something we also need to be mindful of. For some people, it's electronics. They want to buy the latest one in town. Is it really that important? For some, it's school fees. For some, it's house rent. I think I'll speak to school fees and house rent later. Now, sorry, can you please go back to previous slide? So all of this is speaking to living below your means. So one slide back, please. Previous slide, please.
Should I move the slide?
To the back. I think you've moved it. I'm not here yet.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Please, you can also take up your volume.
All right. I hope it's better now. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, yeah. Okay. Next slide, that says 4.
Okay.
Thank you. It's good here. So make your money work for you. Now, make your money work for you means someone once said your money should work twice as hard as you are working. You've already made the money. Let that money earn you more money. First thing I would say here is that you should ensure you have some emergency fund set aside to cater for at least 6 months of your expenses. If your income stops, you should be able to, at least, if you've worked for 5 years, if for any reason you are out of job, it shouldn't be a struggle to live for another 3-4 months before even you are able to, whilst you are trying to figure out where you get the next job. You should be able to have something by the side. So it again speaks to living below your means. So you've been able to accumulate something for the future. Make your money work for you means you should invest. If you are investing, the objective of any investment you are doing should be to earn a steady income, safe income that can continue, that can grow over time. And you should be ready to take advantage of compound interest. So can we go to, I think, to one of the last slides, or the last slide, where I try to do a graph to explain compound interest in a way that's simple. I think the last slide where you see a graph. Thank you. So yeah, here it is. Now, this tries to explain compound interest. Compound interest means when you invest and you earn a return, and that return that you have earned with the original amount you've invested, both of them are earning more. So what that means is that for someone who starts early, most likely you have the opportunity to earn much more over time than someone who starts late. So I give an example here. I call one early bird, I call the other person late starter. The early bird starts by investing 20,000 naira every month. And over his or her career that spans, say, 30 years, has invested the money, and the returns is getting from where it's invested in is 10% every year. That person will have accumulated 45 million over 30 years just by investing 20 million naira every month for 30 years. If you do 20 million monthly over 30 years, so that principal is about 7.2 million and is now 45 million at the end of 30 years. That's scenario one. Scenario two is somebody who didn't start early. Now, 15 years after the first person had started, that was when he was just starting. And the person then says to himself or herself, oh, as against this person that did 20K, I know I'm starting late. I will double it. I'll be doing 40K since I have just half as much time left. I have just 15 more years left. So I will double it and let me start now from the 15th year. Now, that person, at the end of the 15 years, the person is only able to accumulate 16.5 million. Again, the person has also invested the same 7.2 million. That's 40,000 naira per month for 15 years. Now, what this shows is both of them have invested the same amount of money, but the starting point is what differs. Even though the other person doubled the amount, by the time they got to the finishing point, the first person still has almost 3 times as much. So this is the impact of compounding. The first person started early, even with the small amount he or she has, but was consistent at it and had a longer time period for the compounding to work. So this underscores the importance of starting early and being consistent, being disciplined. I had said earlier that it's not so much of the amount alone, it's the consistency, So you start, and then this person may not be able, this late starter, the person I call late starter here, may not be able to meet this early bird, even with contributing twice as much till they retire. So that's the importance of starting early. So you say the best time to start a venture is yesterday, the next best time is today. So it's very important. Please, if you can go back to the slide, thank you. I think the next point I have there is that you should never invest in anything you don't completely understand. People have lost money by reason of investing in things that they don't understand. So it's important you know what you are investing in. So if you don't know, spend some time to learn about it first before you invest, so that you can say, okay, take note, that money is hard-earned. It's a lot of sweat and blood. You don't want to waste it. So you don't want to fall for any scam. So please take note, learn about it before you invest. Next slide, please. Thank you. Diversify your investments. I can't say this enough. We are speaking to making your money work for you. There are 1,000,001 things people can invest in, and that will make money. People would say, oh, some people are rich, or it's because they had an inheritance, they were born into a rich family, blah, blah, blah. I don't believe all of that. You can actually start from where you are. And there are a whole lot of things you can invest in. I just listed a number of things here. I won't want to go through it because of our time, but you can just take a screen grab. But there are a number of things, and you can ask me questions on these later. So there are basic financial instruments that you can walk to your bank or your stockbroker on an asset manager to inquire about and invest in. And there are also some things where you can work on yourself. For instance, I once invested in a taxi business before Uber started. If I recall correctly, I think it was an investment of 1.2 million. And over 2 years, the driver was supposed to bring about 2.3 million. I think he eventually spent 2 years and maybe 4 months, but he returned all the money over time. And as he was returning the money, that proceed was being invested elsewhere. It was being invested in a money market instrument, and it was earning income on it. So at the end of the day, at the end of the day, it made sense. Interestingly, I also did another, I guess about a year into the first one, when I saw it was doing well, I did another one. And within 3 months, the driver knocked the engine. So investments will not always be positive. Take note. So you also need to watch it. So you need to exercise care. You need to exercise diligence. For some of these businesses, these investment opportunities, you need to rely on someone else. So you need to be to exercise care and caution in determining who that person will be. So for some things, there is just buying some items and renting. Wanted to celebrate birthday for my son sometime last year, and went to price items 2 weeks before. Thankfully, I noted it down. I was sending it as WhatsApp to my wife. Went there a week and a half later. The price had already gone up. It was last year. I was like, oh, you told me it was this price. Person said, oh, things have moved. And you wonder that for some of these items, for you that you are using it one time, the cost of leasing it to you is like 10% or 15% on the cost. You don't need it, so you don't want to buy it, so you want to rent it. And just one use, you're already paying 10 or 15% of the cost. So they also have to pay for storage, they have to pay for moving it around, they have to pay for maintaining it, they have to pay for obsolescence, because there might be something new that will come up down the line. But it also means it's an investment opportunity if you really look at it. Because of our time, I'm trying to move as fast as possible. Plan your expenses. I'll spend some time here as well. Now, some of the things I put there are key expenses. I've spoken about power consumption, so I probably won't speak to that. Choice of accommodation. So that is one thing, that's one of the biggest expense of anybody, especially people that lives in Lagos. So, and there's a fair chance that we would overspend on this. So whether you are buying a house, whether you are renting a house, I think one thing we should bear in mind is we should focus more on affordability, especially when you are taking a mortgage. Can you really afford it? If you look at the cost of a house in Lagos, I don't even want to mention numbers because it'll be scary. And you look at the interest you take if you want to take a loan to either build a house or buy, it could be very scary. So you need to ask yourself, can I really afford this venture? As a rule of thumb, when someone wants to rent a house, if it's a couple that's married, I say it shouldn't be more than 15% of the couple's combined income, what gets to them at the end of the month. If you add it together, your annual rent should not be more than 15% of the monthly, 15% of the your annual income. That's after tax. So that gives a sense. And then it shouldn't be more than 20% if it is someone who is single. So by the time you are spending more than that, then you already know that you're overspending. So that's very, very important. One myth people have is that they think their homes are an investment, especially when they buy it. The truth is, it may and it may not. More times it's not. It's not because it's very expensive. And if you look at the opportunity cost of building that house, of acquiring that house, opportunity cost in terms of lost rent, opportunity cost in terms of what you spend maintaining the house in most times. In most times when the children are of age, they leave the house. And then it's husband and wife staying in a 3-bedroom duplex, for instance, or a 2-bedroom flat, and it's not well utilized. And you see that you've lost some things you could have done because you already have that cost of the house tied down. So the charge is, reflect on it very well. This decision I'm making, is it the optimal one? I have friends who are living on the mainland. They bought houses on the island or built houses on the island, and they're renting it out. Like, where I'm staying on the mainland makes more sense for me, because if I factor the cost of paying tolls at the time, paying service charge, transport to the office, or money spent on fueling, you look at it holistically. And I always encourage people, when you want to take a decision on choice of accommodation, you need to look at all of these things. It's not just the rent. It's not just the rent or the cost of acquiring if you are buying. You look at what is the cost of transport from my house to the office. How much time will I spend on the road? Because it also impacts on the cost of fueling. Would there be tolls? Would there be service charge? Are there other costs? I know estates around Lekki, I don't want to mention specific area where even if you buy a house there, the annual expenses is as good as you are renting, you are still paying rent. Because you pay service charge that is cutthroat. You pay for power. You pay for power for some places as high as 200 naira per kilowatt hour or 250 per kilowatt hour, when NEPA is maybe something naira per kilowatt hour, and you can supplement it with a generator or inverter. So you need to be holistic in your approach in determining the best decision you are taking in terms of the choice of your accommodation, and you can easily overspend there. I was speaking to someone recently, a colleague, and he told me what he spent on power in his estate in Lekki spends around 300K a month. I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. How much is your salary? And you're spending that much. I had to keep quiet. I couldn't tell him that what I spend is like 1/6 of that, and I'm still enjoying the same power, more or less. So it's important we note. Another thing is choice of school for children. When we are taking decisions on this, I think emphasis should be on quality, emphasis should be on affordability, not just it's close to the house, or not just, oh, this is where it's happening, this is where my colleagues send their children to. So beyond all of that, whilst you are thinking about that, you should also think about what's the quality of the education. Is this something I can afford? The amount is X amount today. Tomorrow, when they start reviewing and increasing the fees, will I still be able to sustain it? Because you probably would do even more damage when a child is already there, already have friends, and are now pulling the child away from that school. So those thought process should happen before you actually venture into it. Make bulk purchases. It's very, very, very important. If for anyone that enjoys light up to as much as 8 hours a day consistently, I will encourage you have a deep freezer and you buy food in bulk as much as possible. Wherever you can get, it might be Mile 12, it might be Mushin, it might be any major market, buy in bulk. And sorry, how can one overcome the fear of planning once it come? Okay, we'll come to that. So buy in bulk as much as possible and store. A very good food item, tomato, the price for me has been very interesting. At times it's very cheap, and maybe within another 6 months, you get it at 4 times the price. So what stops if you can buy when it's very cheap, and then you are able to, you have it to use when the prices go up. So that's just one. There are times when people do promotional offers where that can be an opportunity to buy at 20% off, 25% off. You can stock up at those periods. One thing I emphasize, when you are stocking up, always check out the expiry dates, that it's not because they expire, that's why they are discounted. And it's something that it will still be good at the time you use it, since you are buying something you might not need until maybe another 3 months or 4 months when you would use it. One other thing when you're making bulk purchases is you need to be careful at the price per volume. So you will see some things are large things, large, call it SKUs, but essentially large sizes. Let me just use maybe a product as an example, maybe Milo, for instance. There's maybe a 400 gram, there's an 800 gram. A 400 gram, they can say is maybe 500 naira. And then you can see instances where the 800 gram, they'll say is 1-1. Now, that's a simple example. If 400 gram is 500 naira, you expect that 800 grams should be twice the cost. So maybe 1,000 or even cheaper. Certain times it's more expensive than 1,000. Now, this is a simplistic example. For some items, it may be 32 gram and 100 and something grams. So you need to check the cost to actually see that the bigger container that you think will last longer is actually more cost efficient. And this is something I saw as recently as yesterday night when I went to a supermarket. So, and people don't look out for these things. So you need to look out so that you actually know that you are getting value. You are getting value for money. Just one thing under power consumption. I know I already spoke about it. So basic things, your lights, your fans, your ACs, those things should never be on when you don't have people in the room. Please kindly mute if you are not speaking. Thank you. So basic, so your basic lighting, sorry, excuse me. So basic lighting, fans, ACs, things that consume power. So if it's not in use, it should be turned off. And not just you might be conscious of the fact everybody in the house needs to know this. So that these things should never be on. If you have a water heater, it should never be on for more than 20 minutes. And once you turn it off, once you put it on and it's on for 20 minutes, just go take your bath. Otherwise, you've wasted that power. Because now when you need it, you now put it back on. So it's something you need to be disciplined about. So, and please take note, whilst we are being disciplined and you're trying to conserve, that doesn't mean we should deprive ourselves. Conservation is not deprivation. So it's important we note that we have these things so that we can enjoy it. All we are saying is it shouldn't be wasted. You can spend money there when you don't need to. So be disciplined about it, but still enjoy those things. Next point I wrote there is that you should insure your assets. Very important, because for many of us, yes, nobody is planning for accident, nobody is planning for a loss. But what insurance does is that it helps us when the unexpected happens. Your car, your house, the building, the content. For some of us, we have very expensive phones, but we are not insured. Valuable assets. Whilst we don't pray for these things, when those things happen, it's good to always be protected financially. I can't count the number of times I've had to claim insurance on my vehicle. I always try to have comprehensive insurance. Now, it's always very expensive. However, when there's an eventuality, you then see that it wasn't. I recall an incident many years ago around Baghdad. I think I was descending the slope and I ran into a Venza. It was brand new at the time. So for me, I was even trying to see how will I pay my own cost. So all I did was I apologized to the guy in my front. I got his contact. So the boot went off and it was an automatic boot. So I just got his contact. We exchanged contacts. We left the place. I said I would call him. We called. I told my insurance company, and I was just thinking of how do I fix my car. It was about a week later. I just called the insurance company, said they had already settled him. 600,000 naira was the cost of fixing his car. How much was the premium I was paying on my insurance? It was less than 100K at the time. So they had fixed his own car, 600K, and then they fixed my own car as well. I never expected that would happen. I never have the money kept somewhere for that. So it's always good we insure our assets, because when those incidents happen, it could be time when we are very broke and then someone else takes care of the bill. There's nothing as good as that. So lastly, I said, avoid taking loans for things that you consume. Taking debt could be good, depends on how well you use it. I recall taking loans at 4% because the company I worked for at the time could afford me loans of 4%, and I used it to buy things, or at times I take the loans and I'm able to invest it and earn 10%, and I make a spread. So loans could be good. You need to be mindful of what those loans are applied for. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. All right, so the next two slides, I think, are my final slides. So the next two slides speaks to, so we've been discussing things we can do to save money so that we can get to that future of our dreams. Now you've saved this money, what do you then put it? What do you put it into? Today, inflation is around 31%. So if you have your money and you leave it in the bank, it's losing.
But when I spend this thing,
that money is losing value every day if you have money and you kept it just in the bank, because we all know what happened to the price of rice. So I recall buying rice in December at 56,000 and thinking it was so expensive, only to learn that it's crossed over 80,000 today. So it's important you invest and let your money work for you. Let the power of compounding work for you. And interestingly, as we speak, rates are currently very high across almost every financial instrument versus, say, this time last year. So I put here a few. You can do a screen grab to note this for this slide and the next slide as well, because there are things that you might need to make reference to. The first thing I would say here is I will try not to mention any company as much as possible. And also to mention that investments naturally involve risk. So please do your due diligence very well on the entity you want to invest in or on the instruments you want to invest in. So I gave an example of investing in a taxi. One did very well and the one didn't do well. So you should always do your checks very well. And if necessary, you need to consult an advisor. By all means, please do to consult a professional before taking any of these investments. So first I wrote here is, so I describe this fixed income and equity. Fixed income generally means things you invest money in and you get a fixed and predetermined return. So it's fixed, you can bank on, you can look forward to it. You know with precision that this is what I will get at the end of the day. Equity rather are investments you do and you don't know how much you get in return. Where if the company does very well, you can do very well. If the company does very poorly, you can also lose all your money. Now, for fixed income, today, you can fix your money with banks. Maybe I should even start with savings. You can save money with banks. In your savings account, you get interest. You get interest on your savings account. And you can get interest as much as today, about, I think, 6.8%. That's the savings rate on your savings account. But most banks will say, if you want to earn that interest, you should ensure you don't withdraw your money more than 3 times or 4 times in a month before you can earn that interest. Otherwise CBN mandates banks to pay interest at 30% of MPR, which is currently at 22.75% as at today, pending the outcome of next week's MPR meeting by the CBN. So we should be mindful. Now, fixed deposit allows you to earn more returns. So the estimate today is between 10 and 17% for retail, for money most of us can afford. Maybe 100K, 200K, million. So you can earn between 10 and 70% annually. Please, any reference I make to rate is rate for a year. So if the money is invested for a shorter period, then it will be adjusted for that period of time. So fixed deposits, you can walk to your bank, you can get it. There are a lot of asset managers as well that have fixed deposit products, and then a lot of apps, call them fintechs, that also offer fixed deposit products. I think that's the easiest instrument to see around fixed deposits. And you can do for 30 days, you can even do for shorter in some places, and you can do for up to a year, and you can get between 10 to 17% annualized return. Commercial paper. So commercial paper is, so all of this, like I said, is one form of debt or the other, is lending somebody money and the person is returning with interest. So that is the underlying feature. So commercial paper is a tool companies and banks use to raise money from the capital markets. So like I said, I don't want to mention them, but a company just closed one yesterday. I think they raised money for 270 days. And they paid an interest of 25% per annum. So for that, the minimum is usually 5 million naira. So you can reach out to any investment bank to let you know when those opportunities exist, and they pay 25%. So 25% in a year, it was for 270 days, so it will be prorated. It will be prorated. So prorated meaning 270 days means 9 months. So as against getting 25%, you get 25% times 9 all over 12, because your money is not spending 1 year, but it's spending 9 months. So, but that's one of the highest returns you can get today. And it's usually a company or a bank that is that you are exposed to. So you do your research that it is a company I know will still be around for the tenure that I'm giving them the money for. So we need to do that check. The next one is debt mutual fund. So what this does is this: a company, an asset manager, pulls funds from different people together. They are professionals, they know what to do. They pull all of the money together and they now invest on your behalf. So they will invest in those fixed deposits, they will invest in commercial paper, they will invest in treasury bills, they invest in all of these things. So, and then they take a portion, maybe 1%, 1.5% of that money for their work of managing that money and taking those investment decisions. So because most of us are not professionals, so essentially we are telling them, you are the professionals, help us invest this money. So they will look out for the best returns, aggregate the returns, and take something out for themselves, and then you get the balance. So kindly mute if you are not speaking. I can hear an echo, please. Thank you. So today, most of them are giving returns around 10 to 15%. So just to give a background, starting this year, interest rates moved because the government is trying to attract foreign portfolio investors, essentially keeping it simple, trying to attract dollars into the country. So rates have gone up. Now, because these asset managers for the mutual funds, they pull money from different people and they invest in instruments that could last as long as 9 months, 1 year. So it will take some time before that revised high interest rate reflects. Same way too, if it goes the other way around, if rates suddenly drop, it will also take some time to drop to that level because they've bought some assets that would last them for a long period. So that is why it would appear that the rate is still under 20%. And also because of the work that they do, they cannot invest. So generally in investment, the longer the time period you are keeping the money out for, usually, but not all times, usually the higher the interest rate or the higher the returns you get on it. Now, for debt mutual funds, so the way they work, like I said, they are professionals. People can walk up to them and say, oh, I need my money now. So given that they will not invest all their monies in 1 year that will give them the highest return. They will invest some in 30 days. They will keep some in fixed deposits. They will keep some in fixed deposits just so that it averages out and they are able to provide cash to whoever needs cash, whoever wants their cash at any time along the way. Treasury bills, I guess that's perhaps the sweetest one currently. Treasury bills are notes offered by the federal government of Nigeria.
This period.
So kindly mute if you are not speaking. Thank you. So treasury bills are issued by the federal government. So it's federal government borrowing money from you. So it's seen as one of the safest form of investments because if for any reason federal government cannot pay back, they will just print money and give you back your money. So it's very safe. Now, however, a few years ago, what the CBN did was that they said retail, by retail investors, it means individuals, you and I, do not be participating in treasury bills. Leave that to only institutions. And what they did was to raise the minimum to 50 million and 1 naira. So if you don't have 50 million and 1 naira, you can't invest in treasury bills. However, a number of asset managers, banks still pull people together so that they give people an opportunity to invest in treasury bills. And for pulling you together, they will say, okay, with 100,000 naira, you can invest. However, they will charge you something small when you are investing. So for some is 1%, for some is higher, for some is lower. But on treasury bills today, usually runs for 3 tenors, either 91 days, 182 days, or 364 days. And the effective return will be has been ranging from 18% to 27%. Now, how treasury bills work for those who are able to invest as much as 50 million naira is that you can decide your rates. Okay, I want to invest at this rate. Then when the CBN auctions it, if the rate you say you want is lower than the rate that clears all of the money that they need, then you say that your bid is successful and then you get that rate you want. However, if you are unable to invest as much as 50 million, which I believe most of us might fall in that category, at least I fall in that category, you can speak with your bank. So you won't be able to quote a rate, but your bank can give you a very good rate that is at least close to that highest rate, but it gives you a returns that is today, 1 year bills, whichever way you slice and dice it, you're almost sure that you will get above 20%. Regardless of the bank that you are speaking to. So speak with your bank, you can speak with your asset manager. Some stockbroking firms also offer the service. Please take note. Now, moving to the longer tenor, all of the things I've said so far, investments are short tenured, less than a year. So I'll go to bonds. Bonds are usually longer. The first is the Federal Government of Nigeria savings bonds. So I'd mentioned that the CBN said individuals should no longer participate in treasury bills and increased the minimum. So what they now did was to create a savings bond, which has a tenor of 2 years and 3 years. So every month it's offered. So one will be 2 years, one will be 3 years. The one for March was offered at 15.097% for the 2 years and 16.097% for the 3 years. So you get that returns, and then you can speak to any of your stockbroking firm. They will be able to, they will tell you when it's time, and then you can invest through them. They pay you interest every quarter, and then they give you your principal at the end of the period, whether it's the second year or the third year, depending on the one you opt for. The Federal Government of Nigeria bond is the next one I have there. Similar to the treasury bills, you require 50 million naira and above to participate. In recent times, rates have also gone up. There was an auction on Monday, this past Monday, such that the 10-year federal government bond was priced at 20.45% and the 7-year at 20%. For those who have a longer time horizon, and this might be subject to our age or subject to our financing goals, where we are able to leave out money for that long, it might be something that might interest you. So imagine locking interest at 20% for 10 years. So meaning when currently rates are high, as I've said, there are times when rates are single digits, 6%, 7%. This was end of 2020 or 2021. If you're able to lock in rates at 20% today, thought that another 5 years, you're still enjoying 20%. I think that's an opportunity that you don't see very often. And come to think of it, you are investing in Federal Government of Nigeria instrument. So that element of risk is gone. And then you just get your returns every 6 months for a bond. The next one is similar to it. Federal government backed sukuk is a different type of instrument where sukuk is issued, and the minimum is 10,000. So this one, everybody can participate. It's been done almost every year now for the past 7 years. I think 1 year was skipped because of COVID. So the last one that was done was at 15.75% last year. The year before was 15.64%. 10 years, and then you get that high return. Again, investing in an instrument that's federal government, but it's 10 years. So people need to be mindful of the tenor. But one thing it can do for you is once you've logged it in for 10 years, every 6 months, they pay you interest. And then if you have that interest or returns from different instruments, you can also then use those returns to invest in something else. And that is how your compounding works. So be mindful of that. The last thing I have under the fixed income there is corporate bonds. So for corporate bonds, it works same way as federal government bonds. The only difference is that it's now a company. It's now a company that's issuing the bond. So your exposure, your risk is to a company and not to the federal government. So usually when that is the case, you pay a little more than you'll have. Sorry, the interest is a little higher than the federal government because there's the element of risk is increased. So I think there was one that was recently done by a company and it closed at 21% for 10 years. So similar, is just the person you are investing in differs. And like as I had mentioned earlier, you need to do your checks to be sure that it's a company that will still be around for that long. And usually for corporate bonds, the tenor, same thing for federal government bonds, it could be as low as 3 years and could go as high as 20 years or 25 years. For corporate bonds, the minimum is usually higher, usually around 10 million. In few instances at 5 million or 1 million. But it offers you an opportunity to enjoy high interest rates for a long period of time. I'll move to equity, which is shares. So for shares, you are buying a slice of a company and then you profit when the company profits. So if the company declares higher profit, most likely they will declare higher dividends and then you get the dividends. And most likely as well, their share price will increase. And then the value of your investment increases. You have an opportunity to either sell when the price goes up or to keep with the hope that it will keep going up over the long term. So here, the return is not fixed. So the estimate of dividends for most stocks in the Nigerian market is between 3% and 8%. So that's what you get every year for those who make profits and pay dividends. For those who make profits, they are able to declare dividends. Sorry, Victoria, please kindly help mute everyone. Okay, thank you. So for those who pay dividends, it could be up to 8% in certain instances. Now, the next one is equity mutual fund, similar to debt mutual funds. This time is a professional that is managing your money. You give them the money, they take those decisions on your behalf, and they earn a return from it. But at least you know that your money is in safe hands and is in good hands of professionals. That doesn't eliminate the risk associated with equity. I put here that they pay dividends, but you can also get a capital gain, which is variable. It can be high, it can be low, and then it can be a gain, it can be a loss. But all in, oftentimes over a long period of time, it has always been positive. So somewhere at the end of this slide, I try to show what the returns have been over the past 10 years on the average for the Nigerian market and on the average for the US market. If you go to the next slide, which is the last main slide, speaks to investment opportunities in foreign currency, usually in dollars. Next slide, please. So similar to the last slide, just that here it's dollars. So again, debts and equity. For debt, you can have fixed deposit. You can speak with your bank that you want to place money. You have $2,000 that you don't need for the next 6 months. If they can give you interest on it. Oftentimes for banks, the rates range from between 0.25% and 3%. A few can do up to 4%. Some asset managers are able to offer something higher depending on the amount you are investing and how long it will be for. So you can speak with any of your asset managers. Next is USD mutual funds, and there are a number of Nigerian asset managers that offer this as a product where you can invest in their dollar fund. So for most of them, they expect that you leave the money for at least 6 months before you start to make withdrawal, and they offer varying returns. The way mutual funds work is that returns are not fixed. The return today might be altered by the time it gets to the next 2 weeks. And this is because every day they are receiving new monies. So as they are receiving new monies, they are investing those monies. They are able to invest it either at a rate higher than the rate the previous one was invested or lower. So because of that, it dilutes the returns that they are earning. So the return can go higher or it can go lower. But all in, they try to get the best possible returns in the market. Like I said, they are professionals and they earn a fee for this. So some of the instruments you are able to invest in directly, they are able to invest in, and all the capital you need to commit is just $1,000. For some, $1,000 are multiples of $100. For some, multiples of $500, and you have an opportunity to invest your US dollars. The interesting thing is that as at 6, 7, 8 years ago, the opportunities to invest dollars in Nigeria really didn't exist. For some banks will say for even holding your dollars, you need to pay them more or less. But I think the opportunities are increasing over time. The next thing I have there is same USD mutual funds, but there are some global asset management firms. There are some foreign asset management firms that you can have access to invest in their mutual funds, courtesy 1 or 2 banks in Nigeria. Minimum is 1,000. I think for one, they charge you a 3% commission, but you can choose from an array of mutual funds that you can invest in. And it can be equity fund, it can be debt fund. Now, but one thing I observe with most of the foreign asset managers is that as against the local ones, for their debt fund, you can actually still make a loss. So you need to, I usually would not advise people to do debt for the foreign fund. They can do equity instead, because when people do debt, they are doing it with the perspective that, oh, my principal is coming back more or less. And I'm just going to, I'll get some return on it. And also for most of the foreign debt funds, the returns they get is small. So if you are in the US today and you wanted to borrow, you want to take a loan, the interest may be as low as 8%, 9%. If you want to do the same thing in Nigeria, we probably will be talking about 25%. So same way, the returns to there will be lower than here. And that's what we found over time. The next opportunity there is Eurobond. For Eurobond, you can speak with your banks, the Treasury Department, or you can speak to your asset managers. For Eurobond, the lot size is a face value of $200,000 to invest. However, you see that some banks and asset managers give room for people who don't have as much, who have just $10,000 to participate. They will pull people together and invest in an Eurobond for them. So when you speak with them, they will tell you, oh, this is what is available for now. This is what I can get for you. And they can get at market rate. So depending on the instrument, you can invest in sovereigns, governments of some countries, of governments of Nigeria. You can invest in a company's Eurobond. So again, like I said, all these things are just one name or the other. The main thing that you need to know is whose risk are you taking? Who is paying back this money? Who am I exposed to? So that I will know who to check. Am I comfortable investing in a product by the federal government of Nigeria? Am I comfortable investing in a product by XYZ company? And then what is the returns I will get? And it's over what time period? So for Eurobonds, a number of them maturing 2026, 2027, 2031, and then go as long as 10 years or even longer in some certain instances. So returns today hovers around 6 to 10%. So enough of debt. Enough of debt, and then for equity, so you can invest in shares as well of foreign companies. So all of those companies you hear of, the big ones, the ones that make phones, the ones that make computers, all of those companies, I don't want to avoid mentioning names. Now, there are some fintech apps, at least I know 3 of them, and I use one of them very well, where you can actually subscribe, and it gives you exposure to some of these foreign equities. Now, you need to read their rules very well. For one of them, they recently introduced a rule that you must do a trade that will earn them $1 every month as their own commission. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you will pay a fee of $1 every month. So you need to be mindful. So in such a situation, you must be sure that you can do a transaction that will earn them $1, and that's a transaction of at least $100 a month. But it gives you exposure to all those foreign stocks of the foreign companies. So now, over there, their dividend yield is not as high. Some don't pay dividends at all. Some pay very low dividends. So most of the big companies you see and know of, the dividend they pay is usually around 1% or less. And if you are investing from Nigeria, they charge you a withholding tax of 30%, as against those who are investing from maybe US that pay 15%. So please be mindful of this. But it gives opportunities for long-term growth as well. For most companies that don't pay high dividend, their share price move up faster. So one thing I observed, and you need to carefully select for most of these foreign companies, is that if you select very good stocks, for some of them, they grow their dividends every year by between 8 and 15%. So what that tells me is that I want to hold stocks of such companies, because I know in retirement, inflation will still happen, despite the fact that I no longer earn an income. So how do I ensure that my income in retirement still grows? Is by investing in instruments where the income they pay me also grows at that time. And this can be a very good source of that. Please keep that in mind, but it's something you need to carefully select. Check the track record of these companies. Have they been paying growing dividends over time before you decide which one to? And then the last one there is equity mutual funds for foreign asset managers. So similarly, you have exposure to them. So this gives you exposure to the US market. You can choose to buy stocks of a particular sector, maybe consumer stocks, maybe technology stocks, or maybe stocks of the entire market. So a mutual fund that tracks maybe the S&P 500, which is a proxy for the entire market. So, and as the market grows, you also grow. Someone said over the past 40 years, the US stock market has grown by an average of over 10%. And if that is consistent over time in dollars, I think that's very good. So you should be mindful of that. you observe for the returns that I put variable capital gain, meaning it can go up, it can go down. Please take me to the slide where you have returns of Nigerian equities and foreign equities. I think it's either next slide or 2 slides from here. So we can close on that slide. No, it's further than it's in the appendix. It's in the appendix.
I've moved. Is that there's a gap, there's a lag. So
Okay, I see.
It.
Okay, all right, thanks. So this gives a snapshot of the returns over time, the Nigerian exchange, so the average of the entire market. So we can see how it has moved. The items in red are when it dropped. So that's why I said it can be a gain, it can be a loss. And then the items in black is when there was a gain over the time. And then currently up until last Friday being yesterday, we can see that the Nigerian exchange has gained almost 40%, and then the average US market has gained almost 10% year till date. So it gives you a sense of what the return could be over time. And like I said, it could go up, it could come down. So I'll pause here and say thank you for listening and take questions. I think a number of questions have been posted in the chat box, so we can begin to take them.
Okay. Thank you so much. I want to see the clap in the room. Magdalene, are you ready to take us through the questions? We'll try to do just 10 minutes for the questions so that on the dot of 10, we're out of here. Magdalene, can you go ahead with the questions?
All right,
Are you ready?
Yes,
Okay,
I am.
awesome.
Thank you so much. Please confirm you can see my. Please confirm you can see me.
Can hear you.
Yes,
can you see my video? Okay.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Kolawole. That was a very insightful session and very, very practical. Very, very practical. Thank you so much. So because of our time, we're just going to dive right into the questions. So let me pull out the questions. We have 3 questions in the chat box. Please, if you have more questions, feel free to drop your questions and we'll attend to them. Okay, questions are coming in. Let me pull out some more questions. Mr. Kola, how do you want the questions? Should I read them one at a time and then you respond, or
maybe you read? You can take. So if there are any questions that I like, you can take them together. Otherwise, maybe you can take two questions at once or 3 because of our time.
All right, sir.
I'll just note them.
All right, sir. Okay, so the first question we have here, I hope people who have asked these questions are still on the call so they can get their answers. All right, so the first question is, how can one overcome the fear of planning one's income? That's the first question. And then the second question is saving money with cooperative and thrift society a good idea? So I think we should take this. Okay, there are actually 4 questions, but the second question and the first questions are the same.
Oh, okay. Let me take, sorry, can you take the first one again? How can one overcome the fear of
planning one's income?
Okay, not very clear to me, but essentially, how can you overcome the fear of planning your income? So what's the fear? So the fear is I'm trying to see what could the fear be, that your expenses will be more than your income. For me, how you can overcome this is being conscious. Identify your expenses, as I had said. Identify your expenses. Look for areas where you think you can make savings, which is why I try to be as practical as possible. Where are the areas you can make savings? And then also, the journey to saving and investment does not begin from the first day. So it starts from identifying your expenses, looking for areas where there is where you can scale, where you can cut down on some expenses, and then you start investing. If you think your income is small, you think your income is small to cover your expenses, I think that should even give you the impetus to say, let me see, what can I cut? What can I cut? And truth also is that at some point it becomes difficult to even cut anything. Then you also need to start thinking, how do I increase my income? So you should be doing the two at the same time, actually. You are looking for things to cut. Meanwhile, you are looking for how to also grow your income legitimately. It might be to take up a better job. It might be what skills do I have that I can start monetizing? So you are looking to increase your income and you're also looking to reduce your expenses. But as much as possible, get to saving, even if you are starting with just 5% of your income, and you let that go first before you then continue. The second question on credit and thrift. For me, it's a very bad idea. It's a very bad idea because you are like four doing a contribution. You might be the second to pick, you might be the third to pick. When people ask me, I said, if I'll be the first to pick, I don't mind. I'll just take it and invest it. And then once it's time, I'll just be paying from it. So, but if you think about it, you're not getting any interest, number one, for the length of time. When if you put your money in mutual fund, you are adding up, you are getting some returns over the period. Also, you stand a very big risk. What happens if the person you are contributing with is no longer available in the sense that no longer works in that establishment? Whilst you say you trust the person, or if the person is also overwhelmed by some challenges and is unable to pay his own bit when it's your time to get your money. So what happens if the person loses his or her job? So the risk is just too much, it's just too open. So for some people, I know why they do credit and thrift is because of the discipline. They know that the money has to go out. A way to also enforce that discipline is to have a standing order with your bank. You instruct your bank also, so they pay this money to this particular mutual fund, and you know it leaves your premises. So that way, that risk is reduced, and then you are also disciplined in making that contributions. Thank you. Next questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kola. So we have an additional question to the 3 questions we have. So I'll read the last 2 questions for you to take. So the third question is, are the interest compounded for these investment opportunities? And the last question says, how do we access the FG bonds? Do we just walk into the bank and ask, or how?
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if you got the questions.
Yes, I got both of them. Thanks. So the first question is, are these interest compounded? So for mutual funds, for your debt mutual funds, yes, they are compounded automatically by default. For your equity, as long as you have not sold the shares, and as long as when you get dividends, you reinvest the dividend either in that same stock or you invest in something else, you're not spending it, then it's compounded. So you're not taking money out of the system, out of the investment, you are returning it in. So that way you ensure that it's being compounded. Now, if you do fixed deposits, usually what they will do is, say you do for 6 months. Once you invest, say 100,000, let's say you get return of 10,000 on it, making 110 in 6 months. They will tell you, usually the bank will ask you, what do you want to do? At that point, you tell them, please, as against reinvesting 100, reinvest the entire 110. So that way you get the impact of compounding. If you reinvest the entire 110, what comes on it at the same rate will not be 10 for that period. It might be 11 because your principal has now increased. So that way it gets compounded. Question about access to federal government bonds. So what I would say is speak with your account officer. I know most banks have a system where there's a form you fill, maybe at least 48 hours or 24 hours before the auction date. For federal government bonds, it's usually done once a month. The auction is always on DMO's website, that's Debt Management Office, when the auction will be done, so you can plan for it. The one for this month already happened on Monday, this past Monday, 18th. So it's usually like middle to towards the end of the month. So you can engage your account officer and you can insist. Take note, for most banks, they would want you to come and do fixed deposit with them, and that might not give you as much return. So you insist that you want to invest in a federal government bond. So they can speak with their treasury team. So usually they would have forms they fill, or they say you send an email. Some of them might say you need an email indemnity because you are sending an email and they are taking instructions over the email. or you actually physically walk to a bank branch and speak with the customer service that you want to invest in federal government bonds, what is the process? So that way you get the form to fill, and then you can fill, and then you ensure you follow through so that you get attended to. So the auction happens on Monday, and then the results will be out either end of that day or the next day. They will tell you whether it was successful or not. So Magdalene, any other question?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Kola. We have two more questions that just came in. The first one is for the debt mutual fund. Do you invest once or you are allowed to invest monthly? Then the last question is, please throw more light on the Euro bonds.
Okay. All right. So for the debt mutual funds, you can invest as many times as possible. There are times I invest today, and then tomorrow I have another money I invest. Interestingly, for me, I've kind of used it as a savings account. You will rarely see me have money in my savings account. What is it doing there? I do when inflation is at 20-30%. So once I have money, it goes straight there. You can even send money there twice a day, thrice a day. And when I need money, for the mutual fund I use, oftentimes within 24 to 48 hours of my asking, they credit my account with the money. So it's easy for me. I just use it as a savings account for me. So you can invest as many times as possible. And for most of them, you can also withdraw as many times as possible. The only thing I would say is they usually encourage you to have your money there for at least 30 days. If you don't have your money there for 30 days, the interest that it earned over that period, say maybe it's 4 days you have it there, they will take a charge from the interest. So maybe 20% of the interest that you earned over that period that is not up to 30 days. But usually your principal remains intact because of what they invest the money in. So the next question on throwing more light on Eurobonds. So the way Eurobond work is that, so think about it as a corporate bond. A company has gone to the market to say, I need some money, but the money I need is dollars. And the dollars I need, I'll pay back in 5 years. I'll pay back in 6 years. So I'll pay back in 4 years, but it's dollars. So that's how Eurobonds work. So just like bonds, so the tenor is fairly long, and also it's in dollars. So that's just the difference. So they also say this is the amount of interest I will pay every year. And they pay twice a year, every 6 months. So same thing with bonds. They pay every 6 months, the interest. And then when it matures, they then pay the principal. So that's how it works. But it's usually for people who have lots of money in dollars, or if you can at least have 10,000, then your bank can pull you together with people that also have smaller sizes till they make up the single lot of 200,000 they can then invest. I hope I answered that question. Thank you.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much, Mr. Kola. Thank you so much, sir. Pastor Victor, over to you, ma'am. Hello, Ma, you there?
Sorry, I was speaking.
Okay.
I was speaking. I didn't realize my mic was off. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello? Okay, so this is us saying thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really don't know. I think it's been in fact, I won't be wrong if I say one of our best sessions so far. Please, if you can just, yes, and please, Paula, if you can take a moment to read through the chat before we close the session. It's just been amazing. The feedback that people have been sharing is I'm sure you've been seeing them. It's just been so amazing. Beautiful ones, and the fact that we have people stay all through. We've spent exactly 2 hours on the call. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to end this by saying that we do have a few activities that we do. I think I already explained that before, but let me just quickly go there. Yes, nothing much here really. It's just to explain that we have our monthly events, and we also have quarterly event. So we'll look forward to seeing you on our programs. Somebody said something about sharing the video. I'm not sure about sharing the recording, but what we do, we try as much as possible to put them on our YouTube page, Inspired for Impact. You see that on YouTube. The ones we are able to put up, we put up. So we have quite loads and loads of videos already on that YouTube page. So please do subscribe and watch. You can also follow us on Instagram, Inspired for Impact. It's also our page with hyphen. You can obviously follow me as well. It's Victoria Ibawa, just those names on Instagram. So until we do this next time, that's going to be in May, because in April we'll be having a book club, but in May we have another series. So Mr. Kolawole Raji, thank you so much. I wish I can say more, but just thank you. So we're going to end this session. Do you have any word anything you want to say, Kola?
Yes, I would just say thank you for the opportunity, Victoria. Thank you. I guess this has been long coming. Well, I think it eventually happened. Thank you very much to everyone.
I'm sure there will be more on bigger platforms.
Most likely.
Thank you.
Thank you for everyone for staying. I know it was a very long session. Thank you for staying through to the end. I think that was quite encouraging as well. And thanks for all of the questions and the opportunity. I think if there are any further questions or insights required, I think you can always reach me, maybe through Victoria, and I'll be more than happy to share in case you need maybe specific contacts where you can get some of these things. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much. And thank you, Magdalene, for anchoring that session so well. Thanks to everybody that joined. You can leave now. So this is the point where we end the session. I'm going to leave the session on. I won't end it yet so that we can pick up all the feedback that we're getting. But you can actually leave the call. Thank you. Good night, everybody. See you in April for the book club. See you in May for the Living Inspired series. In May, we're going to be talking about getting it done. So everything we've learned today for us to be able to get, implement them. Favor, if you can stop the recording now. I think it's a good point to stop the recording.